Hello, world history students. Today is the beginning of Unit 5. This is Unit 5, Part 1, and this is about the Byzantine Empire, a place that you might never have heard of, but was really quite important in world history. The Byzantine Empire is what's left over, or a continuation of, the Roman Empire. You might remember that the Roman Empire fell in 476 CE, and it was the cause of that was the invasions by Germanic barbarians who were being frightened into moving into the Roman Empire by a group of people coming in from the steppes of Asia called the Huns. And all of these Germanic barbarians came across the Rhine, came across the Danube rivers, and invaded the western half of the Roman Empire, and really destroyed everything. They destroyed all of the culture and the infrastructure and the political unity and everything, and created a whole bunch of very small, rather unstable kingdoms. So you can see them on the map. They're like the kingdom of the Franks and the kingdom of the Visigoths and so on. That's what was going on in the western half of the old Roman Empire. But in the eastern half of the empire, and this is the story that doesn't oftentimes get told, or the thing that people don't know too much about, it really continued to exist. The eastern half of the old Roman Empire, with its capital at Constantinople. You might remember the great Emperor Constantine had created a city named after himself, switched over to Christianity, and continued to run the whole empire around the year 300 or so. Well, that eastern half of the empire continued to exist, and it's called the Byzantine Empire, still with its capital at Constantinople, and it continues the Roman political and cultural traditions for about another 1,000 years or so, which is a really impressive amount of time for a place, as I said, that most people don't know about or people forget. The most notable of the emperors at this period of time, or in the Byzantine Empire, was a guy by the name of Justinian. And Justinian takes power around the year 727 CE, and he, like all of the other Byzantine emperors, is in charge of the political state, but he's also the head, excuse me, the head of the church. So he has a lot of power. If you can imagine what it's like to be in control of both the church and the state. It is much better than just being, in charge of the political part of your state. A few of his accomplishments included being able to retake some of that territory that belonged to the western part of the empire. Let's go back really quickly for just a second. We can see that. You can see that when Justinian takes power, all of that sort of pinkish color stuff is what he inherited. But then he is able to add this sort of golden colored, or this brown colored stuff in where the kingdom of the Vandals is, and then parts of Spain, and then all of Italy. And he does that with a very capable general by the name of Belisarius. So that was impressive. Another thing that he did was to create a code of laws. We've been talking about code of laws since Unit 1 with the Code of Hammurabi. You know how important codes of laws are to unify a place. And Justinian's code of laws continues the Roman legal system and ensures that it's going to continue to exist for another 1,000 years beyond the fall of the western part of the Roman Empire. Another thing that he faced was a very interesting episode in which people who were watching horse races or chariot races in a gigantic stadium, this is where they were starting to, believe it or not, have fans, green fans and blue fans, who were not just fans of the horse races, but they started to have sort of political identities as well. And at one point in time, the blues and the greens in this place called the Hippodrome decided that they were fed up with Justinian, and they rioted. They rioted during a, a horse race, and basically were going to not listen to Justinian anymore. Justinian was ready to flee. He thought that his power was over, but his wife Theodora, a very interesting woman herself, convinced him that it was better to stay in Constantinople and fight and die as an emperor rather than to, flee and go off into exile. And so he ordered his generals to assemble a bunch of troops and go to the Hippodrome and slaughter these people, these blues and greens, slaughter them and maintain power. And sure enough, that's what happened. They show up, they slaughter a lot of people in the Hippodrome, and the rebellion is crushed. Another thing that Justinian did was to create the largest Christian church that the world had ever seen. It's called the Church of the Holy Wisdom, or Hagia Sophia. You can see what's left over of this church today in the photograph. Of course, this church, and this is a bit of a spoiler, but this church turns into a mosque, or is turned into a mosque, when Muslim people take over Constantinople many centuries after Justinian was in charge. You can see this dome on top of the church. It's really quite impressive as an architectural feature. Usually, something of that size would just collapse the whole building, but they're able to put that together, and that's probably one of the greatest things that happens under Justinian. The empire, as I said, lasted for about 1,000 years, but it is over that period of time constantly undergoing different kinds of tests of its stability and tests of its existence. One thing that happened over a period of time that weakened the empire was a plague that developed, and a plague that killed many people over a 150-year period of time or so. And so that's 540 to 700 CE. During that time, before that time, during that time, after that time, the empire is being attacked really from the north and from the east and from the south, from the west. It's just constantly being attacked by a whole bunch of different people, never really at the same time, but one by one, people want to take over these pretty rich and fertile lands that the Byzantine Empire have, and some of the beautiful city itself of Constantinople. And over time, the military starts to get worn out. It starts to get too thin, and the empire slowly shrinks. Some of those different kinds of people who are attacking the empire are Arab people from the Umayyad Empire, Slavic people from Eastern Europe, Persian people, Russians, and then finally, and perhaps most importantly, the Turks, the Ottoman Turks. So they lose this territory over time. It makes it more difficult to feed the people of Constantinople. It makes it more difficult to have a bunch of soldiers who generally were farmers, just like in the old Roman Empire. And if you lose all of that land, you're losing your farmers and you're losing your soldiers. So by the year 1300 or so, the empire was really just the city of Constantinople, but it was such a great city, surrounded by these really fantastic walls, that it was able to exist for another 150 years or so. As I said, though, finally the Ottoman Turks were able to conquer Constantinople. They used a gigantic cannon to bash down or batter down the walls and invade, and then take that over and create a new capital city there called Istanbul. Here's a map of Justinian. You can see Justinian's high point is this line that we saw kind of earlier on a map, and then you can see that by about the year 1000 or so, the Byzantine Empire had shrunk down to Asia Minor, what is today Turkey, and then some of what we call the Balkans. That's southern Europe, just above Greece. And then by about 1360 or so, they only have about 100 years left in their existence, and they're really just these sort of reddish-brown bits with Constantinople there between the Black Sea and the Aegean Sea. Constantinople is a city that lies on the European side of these straits, and has good connection to the water. It's really a key place in geography between Asia, or Asia Minor, and Europe. Well, another thing that was going on around this period of time, around the year 1000 or so, is that there was a religious conflict between the East and the West. It's kind of like the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire conflicting religiously. And what was happening is this: in the eastern half of the old Roman Empire, the Byzantine part of the empire had a patriarch, a kind of father of the church, who worked with other bishops in a kind of group way to lead the Christians in the Byzantine Empire. In the old Western Empire, the part that used to be, the old Roman Empire controlled by Rome, there was a pope. And the pope really thought that he was greater than everyone. He was greater than all of the political rulers of Western Europe, and he thought he was greater, in fact, than the patriarch of the Eastern Church as well. Both patriarch and pope kind of have their roots in the word for father. So they're like the fathers of the Western Church and fathers of the Eastern Church. Well, the patriarch, recognized that he was under the emperor. All of the patriarchs had been under the emperor. The emperor had been in charge. But as I said, the pope was claiming to be above everyone. This is going to cause some problems, as we'll see in this unit, with the pope and kings and emperors fighting in Western Europe. But in 1054, this argument over, the Pope being greater than everyone else had its result in the Pope in Rome and the Patriarch in Constantinople mutually excommunicating one another. In other words, saying, you're not part of the Christian church anymore. They both feel like they have this power to do that. They don't think that the other person is being a good father of the church, and they do that. They excommunicate each other. And people in the East then were following the patriarch, and people in the West were following the Pope, and two churches developed. And in the West, it's called the Roman Catholic Church, and in the East, it's called the Eastern Orthodox Church. And that split remains all the way until today. We'll talk more about the Christian church splitting in a couple of units, and talk about the power of the Pope here in the rest of the unit. I hope you enjoyed today's lecture. Go ahead and do your lecture check. Thanks. Bye.